we're going to have an easy, chill night tonight. Take a break from the Nancy Guthrie case and listen to episode 2 of this SK Confessions. Let me get everything set. And I'll get it in. Okay. Let's get started.
Welcome back, and thank you for stopping by. Let's get on to it. Part 2 of SK Confessions. I went into my neighborhood Home Depot to find what I needed, and sure enough, in the plumbing section, there they were. 2 galvanized steel pipes. I thought it might do to pick up some hockey tape while I was there in order to create a better grip on one side. I rounded the aisle just in time to see a daddy-daughter team shopping for plumbing accessories, no doubt for their original intended use. The little girl couldn't have been any older than 5 and had found the stick portion of a toilet plunger without its companion on the end. She wielded it like a sword and held a defensive pose, quite expertly, I might add. Ordinarily, I'm somewhat irritated by children, but when they do something stunningly mature for their age or endearing to my heart, I can't help but smile. And smile I did at this feisty little sweetheart, who I hoped would be Zoe in 4 years. The girl grinned sheepishly back at me. Her smile revealed her thoughts. She was smiling with a face that said, "I'm a little embarrassed that you caught me, but you seem to think it's cool, so I'll return the devilish grin you're giving me." I think the young lady and I shared a moment just then. I strolled into the parking lot and got back into the comfy, me-shaped indent in the front seat of my maroon sedan. I wrapped the pipe ends in hockey tape for optimal gripping. Satisfied with this, I went home to relax and set up my next victim. The cool thing about a 7-month-old is that you can openly tell them anything and they can't rat you out. I needed that from my daughter, since anyone else I could spill to would be dialing 911 before I finished. I knew only I had a limited amount of time before Zoe's comprehension got to the level where that wouldn't fly, so I got in as much talk time as possible with her early development, when the words were just soothing sounds to get her used to the English language. I'm a huge fan of the Showtime series Dexter, as you may have guessed if you're at all familiar with the show. Dexter enjoys the sweet, dark alone time of his own apartment since his TV girlfriend Rita and her 2 kids, Aster and Cody, are not as tangled into his life as my family is with mine. I had to do it with the sweet, dark alone time of my basement computer office. Once the child was snugly tucked away in her crib and my wife was sleeping peacefully, it sufficed perfectly for what I needed to do. My wife is certainly no sound sleeper, requiring earplugs just to conk out and getting up several times during the night, but we sleep apart, so my disturbing her from getting up was never an issue. Some people, I think, that sleeping apart is detrimental to the relationship. I don't see how. I mean, I'm only a serial killer, seeing my ex-girlfriend on the side, and my wife has no clue about it. But neither of those things has to do with the sleeping arrangements in our household. I sleep in the basement because I often stay up later than my wife, and when we do sleep together, there's never enough room in a queen bed for 2. Eventually, the kicking and blanket hogging has us reevaluate the importance of sharing a mattress. I fired up my IP address blocker and launched 2 windows for my dual purpose, keeping to my rules of never using the same account twice for anything. I opened a brand new email account. I stuck to the majors: Hotmail, Yahoo, Gmail, something generic. When choosing a username, it always reflected my new alias in some way. If I was an immigrant from Ireland looking for guys with a thing for redheads, I used a username to the effect of Irish Fire Cream or something else just as apt. Once the account had been created, I used the second window to launch the dating site of choice. I switched that up to keep it interesting as well. Sometimes I would use a basic free service, and sometimes I would use an elaborate pay service. It never mattered because women never have to pay to use those sites anyway. It's the horny retards on the other end who let their dicks dream open their wallets. On this night, a Thursday, I decided on a free site. New photos are important. A photo of a girl that looks too professional gets overlooked because it reeks of spam bot. It also causes the guy to ask for more photos, which I would of course not have and would be forced to start from scratch. A handy trick I use to steal other women's photos from the same site, but in a different city. So if I posted my profile originating from, say, Portland, I would do a quick search in Nashville first and find a woman who I would generally be attracted to. Someone who doesn't come off as a total slut, who also doesn't exude prude either. In this case, I went ahead and chose the redhead from Ireland, going out of the country entirely for photos. Writing a woman's dating profile is very simple. You read enough and they all start to sound the same after a while. I wrote delicately, sweetly, as a woman would write. I listed a few of the things my new persona was not interested in and made a few kind comments at the end and an invitation to message me. This profile was listed looking for dating, which is much more manageable than intimate encounter. When looking for dating, I only had to sift through less than 30 emails throughout the day. But when putting intimate encounter, it's more like 30 messages per hour, sometimes more. That can be good or bad depending on what you're looking for. I was looking for someone to match my needs for a new victim. I wanted a man who was financially stable, lived alone, didn't answer to too many people, and might have some time off coming up. I got exactly what I was looking for. Amongst the smart-ass punks and creepy old fellas who frankly would be more suspicious of me if I gave them the time of day than not based on their appearances, was my target. A 6-footish, seemingly nice man who appeared clean-cut, not overly good-looking, but not ogre either, and most importantly, fit for the profile. We exchanged messages back and forth, but when it came time to move in for the invite, another curveball came my way. He wasn't available Friday, only Saturday. I had put in too much time with this guy to start over, and my mind began to race about how to fit it in. I chose Fridays because I had a fake appointment with an imaginary psychiatrist who I told my wife I was seeing to sort out some of my issues, although I had already done that some time before. It was very convenient and perfectly credible cover story, though, and I saw the merit in keeping the illusion going for the purpose of my late-night freedom. So every Friday I would leave this house and prep for a kill, while my wife was convinced my shrink was working his magic. I even added the special performance of seeming lighter and more relaxed when I walked back into the house. It was only partially an act, since I did feel, in fact, good about my evening. Just not in the way Tess had expected. Starting a kill on a Friday works on so many levels. For one thing, most people are not hard and fast as expected to be anywhere on the weekend, which gives me 3 days to clean up and tie up the loose ends. For another, I ordinarily need to skulk around doing my dirty work in the dead of night after Tess and Zoe are fast asleep. With all that night activity, I get pretty bagged during the day, so it's nice to not have a career obligation on top of lack of sleep. I wasn't quite sure how to deal with my new friend's schedule change. I thought to myself that starting over and slamming on the gas with a different profile entirely in order to stick to the plan would have been the best idea. But I'd already groomed this guy and felt profile mattered more than time of day. I decided to leave it open and sleep on it, deciding what to do in the morning. Friday morning came and my decision was made. I would scrap yesterday's escapade and start over fresh. I found some new photos from a girl from LA and whipped up an intimate encounter and profile. Something quick and dirty and to the point. She was on the prowl and looking to hook up that very night, my chosen night. Then something happened I did not expect. A pleasant surprise among the scads of emails from young douchebags with no appeal at all and some flaming rude comments at the ready. I got a message from Mr. Thursday. It seemed that he was not only a liar, but a wannabe player as well. He lied to my other dummy account about being tied up Friday and was seeking something with more immediate gratification for the time being. It was all I needed to see. I flirted back and forth like it was an art form. Finally, when enough messages had been exchanged, I felt comfortable in his comfort level. I invited him in. It crossed my mind to use my other account to message him and entice him into this night as well, just to watch him squirm. But I would watch him squirm plenty in person. I gave him step-by-step directions to my kill room without revealing an address and making sure to include the generous excuses about the bus stop in front of the place and the lack of parking. He bought it hook, line, and sinker. This time was set for 7 o'clock. My kill room was still perfectly set up from the last time. Plastic sheeting hanging from walls on the floor, and of course, around my glorious table, duct tape sealing the seams to create a bubble to work within. I put that useless stun baton away and stretched my body out to limber up. I donned my mask, pulled my hood up, and waited. The lights were still on inside the garage. It was 6:47, and I had a little time yet, so I got myself psyched up for the main event. Suddenly, I heard the rumble of a car engine and sharply turned to see the wheelbase of a Mazda slow and then continue. My adrenaline soared. That was him. The bastard was early, and I know how he had to have seen my feet at the very least. I decided to stick to the pattern anyway. I shut the lights all down and waited behind the curtain I had rigged up to shield me from the sight, my 2 pipes in hand. I ran entirely on sounds now, the car's engine silencing. The brief pause where all I could hear was the distant sound of main drag traffic lightly dancing in the background. Then the door opened. Footsteps followed, and then the car door slammed shut. Another pause. I could hear the crinkle of his clothing as he crouched to get under the door. He stood up and said, "Hello?" I froze. This was new. I never heard anyone call out hello to a black, empty room before. He assumed I was still there, and he was right. After all, I had told him under my alias there would be a guy using the garage for the weekend as a workshop. I quickly took the mask off, setting it on the weaker secondary table I used for my laptop. Without any other plan, I began acting again. "Hello?" I called back in a cheerful tone. I moved to the light switches and illuminated the room. "I'm Harry," I said pointedly, not sure what else to say exactly. "I'm a local filmmaker, preparing a set that's supposed to look like a serial killer's little area here. You might have heard of my stuff. I'm the guy that put together the comedy feature in our local film festival." "I haven't heard of that," replied the man who I will refer to from now on as Jim. I went into super friendly mode, showed him my prop gun and how it wasn't real. I quickly mentioned that his date was running a little late and would be back in about 20 minutes. He said he would come back. For 20 minutes, I paced back and forth, considering what to do, weighing the risks and the benefits. He could be on the phone with one of his friends, revealing the address and telling them all about my setup. On the other hand, he knows me, so now I have an advantage over him, and simultaneously an obligation to use that advantage to remove him from the picture. Still, when my 20 minutes were up, I chickened out. As his car pulled up for the second time, I whipped out my cell phone and in another grand performance, pretended to talk to my alias over the phone. I delivered the bad news that tragically it looked like she wasn't going to be able to make it. "I'm sorry, bud. I don't know how long you had to drive to get here. 27 blocks total, 10 minutes tops, including lights. But it sounded like she's stuck in traffic and has no idea how long she'll be." And with that, my victim left. He walked right out the door, and that should have been closing on his doom right then. I took stock of my situation. I was standing in the middle of a perfectly prepped kill room and was actually going to let this go down as strike two. I already had the room set up and the whole night was mine to do with as I pleased, so I jumped back online to find someone who was willing to drop everything and head over right away. My new account, which I had just created that morning, had clear over 200 messages from all sorts of people. After 25 minutes of pursuing, I still had nothing when my twice-escaped victim sent me a message. My immediate reply was a huge apology and an offer to reschedule for the next day. His reply was to come over again that very night. He didn't live far and didn't want to waste his night any more than I had wanted to waste mine. I stared at the laptop screen, unmoving, for half an hour, deciding, humming and hawing over the details. Finally, I went for it. I typed a message back with a quick apology for the delay and an invitation to come back. I meant business. Crouched, poised, I had a whole new plan. No mask needed this time, just pretending to be poking around at the back of the set, and then wham! I would slam him unconscious and his survival would be a bonus, but not necessary. He played into it perfectly. He reappeared through the garage door, and I soon followed. I guess I'm just a glutton for punishment, he shrugged. You have no idea. The room filled with the echo of the pipe crashing into the back of his skull, and as I could feel my predator self take over, that one single motion was the end-all be-all. I had committed now, and there was no going back. The jig was up, and it was kill or get arrested for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, maybe even attempted murder. I won't go to jail for an almost. But the son of a bitch didn't drop like the sack of potatoes I was expecting. Are you serious? I asked myself. I continued thwacking Jim over the head repeatedly, but it only seemed to fuel his adrenaline too. He began screaming at the top of his lungs, "Police! Police! Police!" And I just shat my pants. My fury doubled and I blasted him so hard blood spattered everywhere, but primarily on me. He hit the floor but was still unconscious. Just like they all do, he offered money immediately. I always find this a little degrading for both my victim and myself. Like I couldn't just kill them and take it anyway. No, please, Mr. Victim, give me some petty cash from your wallet and run along to the cops, only to lead them back here. Ridiculous. I paused for a moment. You promise? I said. Yes. Just please stop hitting me. Oh, my skull, was his reply. And then in an instant, he had to think about it. I wailed on him again. Despite receiving several mortar blows to the head, the shock and adrenaline of the situation gave him the fire to fight back a little. I've had enough of this, he said, as he feebly, dizzily tried to grab the pipe away from me. My anger resurged. I wrestled it from him, and that was the last straw for me. I pulled my hunting knife from its sheath, and watching the shock on his face, he saw the blade. I thrust it into his gut. His reaction was pure Hollywood. The lurch forward with the grunt was dead-on TV movie of the week. I didn't even notice the garage door was still part open. Wasn't I supposed to close that? Will I ever learn? No one came, no one rustled, not even from across the alley. My little notices that I sent out to the neighbors about shooting thrillers here did their job, and no one paid attention, assuming it was a scene or something. Oh, it was a scene, all right. Jim moaned and groaned. I plunged the knife deep into his neck. Days after the event, I would reflect on this and wish I had tricked him by offering to call an ambulance if he just gave me his debit PIN code before I sliced open his jugular. Maybe I'll save that for next time, since they never seem to just fall the fuck asleep like they're supposed to. I let him bleed out right there on the floor, away from the plastic sheeting, specifically put up to avoid that sort of thing. But hey, I had bigger problems. I had no real idea if a jogger, a dog walker, an unconvinced neighbor, or some other random individual had actually called the cops, just as a precaution. I was standing there covered in blood. It was all over my face, my hoodie, my coat, and my jeans. I was holding the murder weapon in my hand, standing over what would be, in moments, a corpse, and not nearly enough time to make it go away. I got my things ready and did the only thing I could do. I waited. I waited for a sign on what next to do. I waited for the fast approach of sirens as a clue to leave and come up with a damn good story for later. I waited, and I was rewarded with silence. Sweet, sweet silence. I got lucky. No one freaked out, and no one reacted. No one inadvertently witnessed it, and no one called the boys in blue. I was home free. I assessed my situation and went to town in my improvised solution. I had a dead guy that needed processing, so that's what I did. I processed him. I remember thinking as I hoisted this giant up onto my table that I should really stick to smaller guys from now on. This guy was at least 2 inches taller than I was and maybe a couple of pounds heavier, and I'm no shrimp. But I got his dead carcass up on the table, and I figured that since I went through all this trouble and made all this mess that I would have to clean up. I got my game processing kit out, which contained a butcher knife from the hefty meat, a fillet knife for smaller work, a skinnier which might come in handy for scalping the skull, and a serrated saw for the bones. A pair of scissors there was also, and a cutting board. And I had a cleaver there from another order I had placed. I decided the best course would be to go from the feet up. First things first, I pulled out his wallet and keys and placed them on my computer table. Then I used the scissors to cut his pants apart and pull them away. I had my 45-gallon steel drum host to a contractor-grade hefty bag where I was putting all the items. I cut the shirt off too, but I left the underwear. I don't need to see my kill's dead junk hanging out while I'm trying to work. I poked and prodded the joints and found into the path of least resistance. I began cutting legs off at the knees all in one piece. I didn't even bother to take his shoes or socks off. The knife went through like it was nothing. I was surprised at how utterly non-resilient human tissue can be. Even the tendons and ligaments separated cleanly. There was almost no blood, not surprisingly since the grand majority of it was pooled on the floor, thankfully soaked up primarily by Jim's jacket, which had come off in the struggle. I put the leg in the trash and moved to the thigh, which was essentially the same routine, only thicker. I noticed that it wasn't nearly as horrendous as the media made it look on TV or in movies. Dismembering a human body was a relatively unexciting event, but I had my ways of making it more fun. I sang to myself as I worked, talked to myself, reflected on the new tools I would get to make the next one easier. I took the arms off at the elbow joint and used the scissors to cut fingertips for added confusion in identifying the body. The man was very common with no special internal additions to speak of. The head was also a simple matter, and going through the vertebrae in the back of the neck didn't take much at all. The torso was surprisingly heavy all by itself. I cut it in two across the diaphragm. Intestines looked like just one long roll of uncooked sausages as opposed to gruesome millage of stringy nastiness they appeared to be on film. I was surprised. Funny sounds and pressure release took place on my table as the torso sank. Once the body was in bags, I started my cleanup process. I took down the plastic walls from my bubble, which surprisingly had almost no spatter on them. Then I started to roll the plastic on the table. Up to my chagrin, noticed it had very little effect in keeping the blood off table's steel surface. I soldiered on, cleaning up all of the plastic. I tore my green cloth backdrop down and placed it over the larger blood pools on the floor after I picked up the soaked coat and trashed it. The green backdrops went into the trash next, and then I began my stain removal process. I had 2 bottles of pure ammonia that I dabbed onto paper towels to wipe away any small stains. The spatter was everywhere. There were dozens of small spots on the floor and tiny streaks on the walls and the big door. I wiped them all away. The great thing about ammonia is that even if the stain won't completely wipe away, it destroys the sample so that no DNA can be processed. It also eats fingerprints like acid. Its only downside is the fumes, which I didn't smell so much as I feel like a cold winter breeze shooting its way through my sinuses. I kept away from it, more masks whenever possible. I wiped my table clean, scrubbed the areas on the floor that needed it, wiped my computer table down, and noticed a few tiny spots had made it onto my laptop. I was not impressed, but knew they would be easy to spot clean. Next time, the whole room gets bubbled, not just half from my kill room. I had used plastic sheeting normally chosen to cover living room furniture when painting walls, but obviously it didn't suffice. This time I used a single layer of mid-grade quality stuff. Next time I would double layer the high-grade material for sure. When I got finished, I looked down in horror at the sheer level of blood staining my clothes from head to toe. I couldn't walk back to the house like this. I mean, I had extra clothes in my car I could change into. That wasn't the point. But surely there would be a smell that I couldn't get all the blood off my face, not all of it. My phone rang. The familiar buzzing of its vibrate setting going off. The caller ID showed it was Tess calling. What could I do? I answered. Hi, baby, what's up? Not much, where are you? I'm just leaving the gym, hun. The gym closes at 9. I checked my watch hurriedly. It showed 9:57 p.m. My mind raced. I couldn't get caught in a lie, not again. What are you talking about, babe? It closes at 10. The big gym by our place? And there was my window. I had switched gyms when we moved to our new house, so it sorted itself out as I jumped back in to play the game. No, my old gym, babe. I thought you canceled that membership a month ago. I procrastinated, as I tend to do quite often, and did it a few weeks ago, but I still have a couple weeks this month that are paid, so I figured I'd take advantage since it only takes half an hour to cross town anyway. My wife is not stupid. It takes a lot to convince her of an elaborate lie. When she caught me surfing internet dating sites, I spun this quick tale of how I was just researching an article on online dating I got through a freelance website. Fortunately for me, I really was a member of the freelance site already and could prove that part. The next part was much harder. She wanted proof upon proof. I had to manufacture an entire person, which was a lot more hassle than it sounds. I created a fake employer, ran out to get a prepaid cell phone, and then hired an actor to do a role play on the phone with me, on speaker so Tess could hear it. Then I had him leave a voicemail message as this person so that if he called the number, it would sound legit. I went through great lengths to bring my wife over to the comfortable belief I wasn't cheating on her, but me hiding anything was the problem. Even safely believing in my fidelity didn't matter next to he dishonestly of hiding the article from her in the first place. And so our trust issues flared up again. Now every conversation was an interrogation, not just simple questions where she could take my answer at my word. There had to be back-checking involved, so I waited for her response to my explanation after a short breath. Okay, well listen, on your way home, can you pick up a case of ready-made baby formula at Shoppers? Will do. Anything else? In my mind, I begged for her not to ask me to get her a late-night latte. That's all I needed to walk into Starbucks in mismatching attire, dried blood across my face and hands. The sort of thing people notice, even if they feel too awkward to ask questions. No, but I'll probably be in bed by the time you get home. I'm so tired, she said with a yawn. Finally, a break. A dark, silent home to come home where I can go straight to the basement, throw my coat, hoodie, pants, shoes, socks, and shirt straight into the laundry and shower any remnants off me. Fantastic. I'll see you tomorrow then. Okay, bye. I packed up my laptop bag and then opened the garage door, half expecting a team of police cruisers to be waiting outside. But the alley was empty and silent, save for the Mazda parked in the driveway. I took the keys and got in. Frickin' manual transmission. I had never learned how to drive them, but necessity is the mother of invention after all. I probably stalled the damn thing a good 10 times before enough trial and error got me to the point where I could manage to get the stupid thing inside the garage. I laid a plastic sheet across the hatchback floor and put the body bags in the trunk. At least the car was clean and empty. After a quick search, I found Jim's cell phone, turned it off to avoid pings sent from the police to track it, and made sure there was no GPS turned on either. I locked up the garage and went out to my car under cover of night and changed clothes. Stuffing the blood-soaked ones onto my duffel bag, I changed shoes as well. Another glance at my watch gave me the realization the store would be closed by the time I got there, and sure enough, by the time I reached the other side of town, it was way too late to buy formula. It was the last of my worries. I decided to wake up early and run out to the store to grab formula before the baby woke up. But I was so bagged from the events from the night before that I overslept and had to make up something to the warden about them being out of stock last night when I went, which allowed me time to make the trip Saturday morning. I had a pretty normal Saturday, watching the kid so Tess could go get some personal stuff tended to and having a bit of a break. The constant supervision of a young infant, cute as she was. Zoe had always been exceptionally adorable, and I wasn't just biased parents who thought so. Everyone at the hospital was of the same opinion, and every time Tess ran errands, the ladies at the bank would swoon over Zoe like she was the second coming of Christ in a female package. She charmed everyone who met her. She softened the hardened, selfish prick that was Tess's father and won over several others who, until meeting Zoe, had not been kid people at all. The final confirmation was that when mother and daughter had gone to get their first professional pictures taken, and even the people at the photo studio who dealt with children all day, every day, noted how exceptionally happy and easygoing she was. Zoe was born mellow. When other kids were throwing tantrums in public, she stares at them with a questioning look as to say, what the hell could be wrong with you? She loves going places and was very early to alertness. When the other babies were doe-eyed or utterly confused, she was looking around, tracking everything and looking at people directly and curiously. She's a wonderful baby, an angel that we were spoiled to have with such an easy disposition. I really hope she doesn't end up like me. I watched an episode of Dexter where the flashback showed his father showing Dexter CT scans of a human brain. He identified the differences between serial killer's brain and a normal person's brain. Up until I saw that, I was convinced that what I was my own decision, my own path. But now I truly wondered if I had little choice at all, and if genetics play a bigger role than I thought. Logically, then, it should have occurred to me that those traits have a possibility of being passed on to my offspring. I do have hope for Zoe, though. My parents are certainly not like me, so there's no guarantee on generational transition, and she is also half Tess, and I've never seen such empathy, moral code, or ethical sturdiness as I have in her. Quite the odd couple, Tess and I. On a couple of occasions we even discussed my apparent total lack of empathy. It troubled her greatly. She asked me a long series of probing and somewhat leading questions to see if I would give her the answer she desired, but I never did. When you see news stories of people going through tremendous grief or strife, do you feel bad for them? No. Do you ever think about what it would be like if you were that family in that situation? It's never crossed my mind, was my answer, and it continued like this until Tess was satisfied. Her husband couldn't feel much of anything at all, I imagine. I did calm her fears, though, by at least reassuring her that I did care very much about her and Zoe, and that neither of them would ever feel unloved. I do love my daughter very much. She brings me great joy, and I love playing games with her. If anyone ever threatened her happy, innocent existence in any way, I would kill them, cut the body up, and make it disappear. Most people say that about their children, only I actually mean it, literally. Sunday was all set for more family merriment. Much like the Saturday before, I began to get itchy, though, and wanted to move on to the next part of my overall plan for Jim. I woke up at the crack of dawn, 5 a.m., and left the house. Neither of the ladies would be up for another 3 hours, and I had a person to erase. I drove across town to the south side, not for the kill room this time, but for the home of my victim. I found his place without pause, parked in front of the building, careful to examine the surroundings and make sure that there was no video surveillance. It was still early morning, and comings and goings were common in that area. I wore my hoodie to cover my head and face, and my gloves to leave prints out of the situation entirely. My shoes had just come out of the dryer and were spotless. They would leave no imprints anywhere inside that apartment. I used his keys to enter the building, cautiously watching for video surveillance, and strolled down the hallway until I found the door I needed. I paused for a moment. Better not to take chances. I knocked first, just in case, for whatever reason, there was someone inside. There wasn't, and slowly I entered the place, closing and locking the door behind me. A simple one-bedroom apartment, somewhat clean, save for a few dishes left out. It represented a single man perfectly. Motorcycle gear, a big screen TV, a computer desk, a nice barbecue, and some online gaming machinery. I found cash on the dresser, which quickly found its way into my wallet, and I searched dressers, drawers, and shelves for anything else of interest, putting everything back as it was. Then I sat down at the computer desk. I wasn't sure what I would find. I was hoping some basic searches would yield passwords or something, but Jim had done me one better. He left himself signed into everything: Messenger, Outlook, Express, his online dating profile, and his Facebook. All had the passwords auto-saved. I couldn't have had an easier time. I changed the auto response in his email to say he had decided to run away with the woman he hooked up with on Friday, to go on a 2-month vacation to the Caribbean. I changed his status from his Facebook account to reflect the change, and then I proceeded to delete his online dating profile. Judging by his email content, it seemed he was on several sites at once, so that trail would go cold real quickly. My phone rang. It was Tess again, asking where I was. I said I had gone to my parents to pick up a few tools for working on the downstairs bathroom, and that I would be back in an hour. Conversation over. I had an afterthought. What if the police ever did track this back to me and checked my cell phone records? They would see the towers my phone picked up, its signal up from the notice, and noticed I was in the area. If the garage I rented wasn't already a few streets away, that might be a problem. I packed Jim's laptop up and took it with me. I also took his multifunction printer and threw it into a dumpster because the email I sent him with directions to my kill room had been printed on it, and it wouldn't do to have that be recoverable by the police. but I did find something in the printer that would help. A letter to his insurance company with a clear, unmarked signature on white background. It was one last gift from the dead. I could easily use that to forge a bill of sale for the car. If the authorities ever questioned me about it, I could corroborate my own story. Yeah, officer, it was the strangest thing. This guy approaches me on the street and tells me he met this phenomenal woman, a real sugar mama, who is going to take care of him, and that he doesn't need his car anymore. So he asks me how much I have on me, and when I tell him I've only got $23, he says, okay, deal. And I end up with a free car. Armed with my new toys and info, I headed home. My next problem was what to do with the body. I mean, it's not like I had an ocean to dump it in, or a boat for that matter. What did that leave? When you live in a landlocked city, what are your options for making 230 pounds of dead human go away? That's it for tonight, everyone. I hope you'd enjoyed part 2 of SK Confessions, right from the mind of Mark Twitchel. Again, I found this online and it was really interesting, so I wanted to share it with you. Now, there's about 13 pages left, so I should be able to get done with that next time. And I wish you all the best. So have a great night. Stay tuned for part 3.
Okay, so that was part 2 of the diary of Mark Twitchel, who was a failed serial killer. And his defense was that this was all an accident, that he was trying to do like a PR stunt for a new movie that he had decided to come out, and that this was a manuscript. It was just a script for the movie. But he literally followed everything that he did, word for word, in that manuscript. So, yeah, he was convicted and was very salty about showing them where the body was and everything. But yeah, so he thought he wasn't going to get caught, and he wrote everything down, and it's really sick to get into the mind of this guy. So on that note, I'm going to have an early night because we have been doing lots of nails live every day, following this Nancy Guthrie stuff. I haven't seen anything new come out about her. We heard a report earlier about there's Brian Enton saying that he had talked with the sheriff, and the sheriff was talking about the DNA and the snag in the DNA, and that it could take a week, it could take a month, it could take a year. So unless something really, really big happens, I think that's kind of where we're at with that. Continue to monitor that situation and keep everybody on top of it. So until then, try and get some rest tonight. Have an awesome night and a great morning. Tomorrow's Monday, so Manic Monday. So everybody good luck tomorrow, and I will be on at some point. So, all right. Talk to everyone later. Thanks for watching. Hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell if you want to come back and hear part 3 and know when I'm live. All right. Good night, everybody. Peace, love, and claws, y'all.